On this episode, I bring another one out of the archives and talk to Scott Detweiler, a longtime friend and photographer who's gone on to much bigger and better things and has had international acclaim. It's important for me to take these ones out of the vault so that they're preserved for the future. I'm very proud of what I did back then. And so I hope you enjoy this episode and this interview with Scott Detweiler. This is the Photography Junkie. Hello and welcome. Joining me today is my friend for, we can count into years now, Scott Detweiler. How are you, Scott?
Very good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So I'm going to jump straight into the interview because I know we haven't got much time to go through it. Whereabouts are you based?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin is about 2.5 hours north of Chicago.
And you primarily deal in portraiture.
Yes, yeah, 99% of the time. That's pretty much where I land.
So what whereabouts in the camp of portraiture do you land then? Is it the conceptual or
Well, I like the fine art side, so the conceptual side, yeah, I would say that's where the fun is. A lot of my paid work is in the fitness industry, so I shoot a lot of bodybuilders, primarily female actually, and boudoir. I have a work wife named Connie, and Connie and I shoot a lot of those things together because obviously women not exactly comfortable being alone with a man shooting that kind of stuff. So it's nice to have her there. And we have a really good rapport back and forth together, which makes people laugh and it's a great combination. But yeah, I'd say those three camps, the fine art, I'd say conceptual as well. I'll put those in the same camp more or less, and then fitness and boudoir.
so obviously you wasn't born with a camera in your hand. So whereabouts did you actually get introduced to photography?
Well, my background is theoretical physics. I was a physicist, and I helped do a lot of stuff in the correctional industry, and then into the air base and a lot of military applications. Although I was never in the military. And I love to draw. So a lot of what I did later in that career was do a lot of the pen and ink, watercolor, and sketches that you would see for new construction that would come up for different builders in town. And I liked drawing and painting a lot. And then Photoshop came along. So this is probably version 3 of Photoshop. So a long time ago, came in 5.25 inch floppies, I believe. And that was a long time ago. And I would do some Photoshop work at that point, and I really liked goofing with pictures. So you grab a picture and you'd mess with it, and you're really happy, and you'd show off your creations. At that time, I was a big Flickr guy because I think that was like the only site that actually worked for photography. But I found out, not in the worst way possible, that no matter what I did to the picture, the person who took the original picture owned it, including any derivation thereof. So anything I did to that picture, that person owned it. And that kind of made me think I'm just going to grab a camera and I'm going to take some rudimentary picture that I want to take and then work on it. And over time, my frustration came in mostly from the lighting standpoint. The actual always our composition of the picture was fairly easy because I knew composition already from drawing and painting and so on. But lighting it, I could light in my head and draw what I wanted to, but lighting it, seeing a person taking a picture wasn't what I wanted. So learning lighting was probably the big leap for me. That was the thing that kind of made me go, wow, this I could really enjoy the photography aspect of this as well as the post production. And I think today I enjoy them equally. So I do my own post production. I don't source it out, at least not at this time. I mean, someday if I get into a volume business, then maybe, but never the artistic stuff. I like to draw enough that I would never give away that part of this.
So do you think the physics background actually helped with your learning of lighting? Do you view it more technical or are you more on the art side?
No, I'm kind of the weird combination. I am very technical. I can tell you, where my lights are. I can tell you the fall off. I can tell you the type of modifier I used, why I use that kind of modifier. I'm even trying to like write a book on this because I don't think there's anything that kind of covers how to think with your modifiers. So I'm almost done with that. Hopefully that'll be done here in the next few months. But that will be yeah, I think that was kind of based on my physics. I approach things scientifically that way, but there's an art side to me as well. So I'm kind of this bizarre combination of the two.
So you're gonna have to let me know when the book is actually released because I will plug it for you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I definitely need to put some more work into it. I have to shoot most of the plates for the book. I have most of the text done, and I've outlined what I want to do. And I've had a couple people proof it, and they're like, "This is going to be an amazing, amazing book." So hopefully, it will hit the shelves, and we'll hear great things about it. Yeah, I'll
Have you
definitely.
managed to get a publisher for it yet, or are you doing it self-publish?
I, I have not gotten a publisher yet. My first book I had Trey publish it, just like you and I met on Google Plus. I met Trey Radcliffe on Google Plus, and he helped me with my first book. But the second book, I think I'm not going to do the same way. I'm going to try something a little bit different. It's a live and learn kind of thing.
So, how did the Trey thing come about?
Well, I met him on Google Plus along with, you and there's so many other people that are, now Facebook friends, but people talk about Google Plus dying or whatever. And this has done way more for me than Facebook has ever done. I mean, Google Plus is just an amazing mechanism, and it's still growing. I mean, you still get 400 or 500 followers a day. But Trey, we met on here, had a bunch of hangouts, got to meet him over the course of, a year or better. He's like, "Hey, I'm starting up this publishing site," and I said, "Well, I'm working on a book." He says, "All right, let me help you out." So he kind of helped me get that thing published and then help push it. With I forget how many followers he had at that time, around 4 million or so, to try and get that out.
Yeah, he is pretty popular. I think I'm gonna have to try and get him on the show.
I bet you he would do that. He's fairly approachable.
So mentioned briefly that you still get about 500 followers a day. You seem to have unlocked this key to the social media, at least on Google Plus side of things.
Hmm.
How did you actually work out how to do that? Or
Well, I think the key to it is interaction. I know a lot of people. There was like we were getting into this argument with this lady from the New York Times who's she said, "Well, Google Plus is dying." I'm like, "Well, give me evidence of this." And she says, "Well, look at my follower count. It's only gone up like two in the last 2 months, and she's got like 50 followers, and she's got all these articles up there." I said, "Well, it's pretty simple. It looks like you're clicking the box to share on Google Plus, but you're doing what we call a dump and run. You're just dropping it on your blog. You're dropping a blog link on Google Plus. You're not interacting with it at all. It'd be like going to Instagram and posting pictures, but yet not going back and following anybody or liking anybody's pictures. And I consider Google Plus to be very Instagram-like in a lot of its ways. And I think the secret to both platforms is interaction. If you go and plus someone's picture or comment on it or reshare it, that person is more than likely to come to your page and look at your work and go, wow, I really like this individual. Maybe I'll share it, maybe I'll plus it, maybe I'll like it. But I almost always get a follower out of it. So if you look at it like the standpoint of if I go and I'm going to like a lot of pictures, say I'm going to peruse these, like the pictures I like, comment on the pictures I love, and share the pictures I'm just wowed by. Eventually you develop a following doing that. Now, Facebook doesn't work that way because Facebook has what they call the edge rank, which means that a certain number of people have to like it before it's shown to other people. But because Facebook has so many fraudulent accounts, some of those people that it's shown to aren't real. And then therefore your post just kind of dies. And that's why some people who have 90,000 followers only get like 5 or 6 likes on a photo. It's killing itself. Google Plus and Instagram, for example, show every photo shared by every one of your people you're following. So I just think the secret to it is interaction. You have to interact. So those people who are dumping those blog posts on here, I think it'd be better off if they just posted a picture, posted a paragraph or two about what the blog is talking about, and then link to it if I care to look at the rest of it. But at least they'd get some love on the photo. And the fact that the text is on Google Plus means that they would get some search engine ranking from it. But it just seems alien to them to have to work at a platform. They'd rather go back to Facebook and, share some sort of vague bookism about how they're feeling lonely today than, do something constructive. So I much prefer this platform.
see, that's partly the reason why I wanted to actually create the community around the show as well. That's based away from social media, so it's just a home for anyone that actually wants to come and speak with like-minded creatives. Less on the image side, but more on the actual individual side.
Yeah.
So, going back to your journey, you've picked up the camera, you've learnt your lighting, and when did you actually go pro?
I would have to say, well, that's a really weird gray
Or
area.
transition to pro, rather.
Again, weird gray area because I used to shoot every weekend when I first started out. My first adventure in shooting people was late 2008. And that was when I went to a group shoot. I got introduced to the whole concept of portraiture and model photography. And it was kind of one of these paparazzi shoots. We've got, some beautiful woman and you've got a whole bunch of people taking the same exact picture. And at that time, that satisfied my need. I wanted to take my own photo and draw on it and so on. But after a while, I thought, hey, I want to take this to the next level. And I would have a lot of those things that I drew on. I'd have the model come back and say, hey, I'd like to work with you one-on-one because I really like your stuff. And at that point, I'm like, sure. So I shot every weekend. And some of those were paid. I mean, somebody said, hey, I really like your stuff and I'm willing to pay you, to shoot me. I'm like, well, okay. So it started to kind of roll into a situation where the people are willing to pay for what I'm shooting and pay for the result that they get. So it just kind of, I don't know, naturally progressed, but it's just kind of ramped up over time.
So eventually you ended up with your own studio as well.
Yeah, it would be after the studio. It was about an hour from me that I used to go to every weekend. So it was a long drive, and the wife would roll her eyes, knowing where I was going, and saying, "Okay, well, good luck. Come back to me," kind of thing. And I would do that, and then I moved to another studio, but that was short-lived because I disagreed with the morals of the person who ran the studio. And then a bunch of us left, and we started our own. So we've got about a 4,500 square foot industrial space. It's a concrete box. It was full of salt. They used to salt the roads. This road was salt was stored in that room. So they said, "Hey, you got to use your imagination when you look at the space." So I was like, "Okay, imagine this giant mound of salt is in here." So we put some walls up and put up a dedicated hair and makeup counter and changing area. And then we actually said, "Hey, let's open this up so if people want to use the space, they can actually rent it." So we have a shooting space kind of thing. So for a certain amount per month, they have a certain number of hours per month. So we turn it into a nice, and we're growing it still. Like we're trying to put a dedicated boudoir suite in there now because it's probably the number one moneymaker. So that one is one I want to really focus on and get something a little bit nicer because a concrete box, I can make it look beautiful in the end, but it'd be really nice if you had a beautiful room to start with. So, and not to say we don't stage the area properly, but it just doesn't feel as good. And I think that the customer feels kind of weird being in this concrete box. I mean, there's this nice little corner, but so we are going to make a boudoir suite just dedicated to that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a workshop. Not only are you doing your photography there, but you're going there and building things and painting, and we paint walls and we make sets, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
You mentioned briefly the workshops there. You actually, like me, you love to teach it as well.
Yeah, we do a lot of workshops, and I think probably twice a month there's something that I'm teaching. So I'm going somewhere and teaching on site, or I'm teaching in the studio. So we do lighting classes, we do DSLR classes, we do, and I teach my weird way of thinking with light, which gets a lot of people excited, and I get a lot of really positive feedback from it. So that's kind of the crux to push me toward writing it into a book because no one's ever kind of presented it in that way. And I've had some students tell me that they now use my material in their classes. I'm like, well, that's great. I'm glad to see that it's spreading. It's helping people be better photographers. So I rather than feel weird about, gee, that person's using my material, I was all happy that they were actually teaching. So it's kind of a cool. I had a lot of people tell me that's a weird way to look at it. I'm like, well, I'm just happy they're shooting well. I want to see improvement. Even at myself, all my work, I look at, well, what can I do to make this better? And always push yourself to get better. Yeah. Yeah, I have my own place now, and, like, tomorrow, I'm going to Chicago, and I'm doing a fitness shoot. We have some competitive, female bodybuilders coming in from New York and California, and these are not, like, your overly muscular, they look amazing. So, gonna go down and shoot them. It's kind of a red carpet event, so I'll be shooting a lot of those people, and then they're actually gonna do a workout, so we're gonna shoot the workout, take pictures of the patrons and stuff doing the workout. And then at the end of the day, they're going to actually paint pumpkins. So all these bodybuilders sitting around painting pumpkins, and we're going to see what they take pictures. We take pictures, obviously, the whole scene. So Connie and I are going to go down there and shoot that. So, and then we have a boudoir session coming up soon as well. So yeah, they seem to kind of stack in there.
But you said that they make up quite a large portion of your work. How did you get into that scene?
Well, I used to be a bigger guy, so I was a 40-inch waist guy, and I just got bit by the bug that I didn't want to be the fat dad anymore. So I started working out, and I got to a point where I was doing okay, but I wasn't really losing any weight. So I hired a trainer, and he really kind of pushed me. I went all the way down to about a 28-inch waist. I mean, because bodybuilders, if you think about it, they get really big in the off season, and they're able to take all that fat off for these contests. I'm like, well, if somebody can take the fat off somebody, and still look good, it's these people. So I just kind of started to get in with them, and was not the fat dad anymore. And then somebody approached me, said, "Hey, you're a photographer, and I'm going to be in this bodybuilding competition. I'm spending all this time getting my body in peak condition. Can you take a picture of it before I get fat again?" I'm like, "Okay." And that kind of just blossomed into a, "Hey, look at these amazing pictures this guy took. Let's have him take my picture and my picture." And that's how it kind of rolled. So it's way different than fashion photography as far as the lighting goes. It's a lot more precise, a lot more technically challenging, but a lot less retouching, because these people don't you don't want to emphasize their muscles with Photoshop. They earned them. So you're lighting to emphasize the muscle, and then you're walking away from it. So maybe you have a little bit of, the standard complexion, but otherwise you try and leave it alone. You don't liquefy these people. They are who they are.
So the classic story of, if you want a certain market, just be within that market already.
Yeah, well, this year I have a senior in high school, for instance, and I was told by my wife that I would be in the senior photography business this year. So, at least for one client. So I shot my daughter, and then I ended up getting in two or three more that said, "Hey, we really like your work. Would you shoot our senior?" So, okay, and that's worked out pretty well too. Maybe more next year.
Well, you've always come across to me as a very family orientated guy, but creators have a habit of locking people out. How do you reckon that that's played on with you personally, the costs that is involved?
I don't know. That's a really good question, because when was an introvert for the longest time, and people tell me there's no way I'm an introvert now, but I still consider myself to be, like, if you throw me in a crowded room, it takes me a little while to warm up, but I'm the guy who will sit in the corner and just kind of people watch for a while. But I don't tend to be that way when I have the camera in my hand. When the camera's in my hand, I'm a little bit different personality, because to me now it's business. It's I have something to do, and I know how to do it. So I just kind of let that take over, and I run with it. So if I am uncomfortable, it's because I don't have something to work with or to do. So I think the camera is a really good excuse to kind of come out of that shell. And if I don't have to interact with people at that point, I'm satisfying what I need to by take these pictures that later I will mess with or do something with. And I don't care if they're interacting with me at all. They just have to be there. So I try and, like, stay. For instance, I'm not friends with so many models. I work with a lot of them, but you try and stay out of their lives. I mean, I'm married. I've got two kids. I'm happy. So these people are still young and beautiful and out there, trying to, meet their mate. And I'm like, well, I'm not interested in that, and you're not interested in me. And that relationship, though, that mutual knowledge makes it really easy to not be, to not, I say, what do you say? You take things personally. You're just there to do a job, and they hired you because you're amazing at it. Then it's all good. So I don't have that shell when I'm taking the photo.
Yes, it's very similar with me. I always refer to it as the camera gives me permission to talk.
That's a really great way to put it. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Um, I think we're both kind of introvert, extrovert when we've got the camera.
Yes, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it's a completely different type of mentality. It's the same thing when you're shooting boudoir, for instance. I when I'm doing that, I am all about posing the model and getting the shot. And Connie's job is to make them feel like they're pretty and they're beautiful. And as a guy shooting that, you can't say, I mean, you can say some things, but you can't be too creepy about it. So, but I'm there for business. I'm there to get this amazing picture. My job is to make sure at the end of the day that I can deliver to that client what it is they paid for. And that mindset, as I say, you're not worried about social interaction at that point. You're there to do a job, and the social part of it just happens to bleed out at that point. It just comes out of you naturally because you're distracted.
So do you find that the moment the camera goes up to your eye, it almost creates like a shield that goes over your head, and you then become almost like the robot with the camera?
Well, it's just having the camera with me. Having the camera with me, I'm there at any moment. I can take a shot, and I just think that. I mean, when I'm in the mindset, I mean, even if I don't have the camera in my hand, but I'm at a shoot, and I'm there for that business. I have a business mindset at that point. I'm there for a reason. And at the end of the day, I oftentimes, I guess my artistic work kind of is pre-planned in the fact that I'll say, "Hey, I have a really great idea. Let's go ahead and shoot this way so I can create something artistic with it later." Rarely have I walked into a situation where I said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do today to make some art." Usually I have other people who contact me who already have a theme and an idea, and I just need to be the photographer to light it and post-produce it properly, which to me is the easy part. And I think the biggest secret in photography is being around other creatives. Let those people do what they do, and your stuff will look great too. I mean, it's just mutual sharing.
Well, that creates a perfect segue to what things inspire you, what things help you to create those images that you create.
Well, I like a lot of paintings. I heard that when I first started out. If you study the classical masters, and you learn things, and I did, but it wasn't what I expected to learn. A lot of it was composition. Yes, lighting is a huge part of it. Like people talk about dark and moody images, but a dark and moody image almost still has white in it somewhere. And I don't mean like pure white. I mean like darn close to white, so it'll still print. But there's always white paint somewhere on a canvas, and there's always black paint somewhere on a canvas. So I'll see people post pictures and they say, well, this is a dark and moody image. I say, well, no, it's actually just a really underexposed photograph. uh, where's your white point? You don't have a white point. Well, it's because they don't know how to light something to have, this rim light or a subject light or something that is the focus of the photo. And I think so that those classical painters really help with that. Another one would be comic books. I love that a comic book, you have a very limited, I mean, you don't have any movement at all. Sometimes you don't have any color. You're looking at a black and white sketch that somehow has to look dynamic and interesting. So how they take a portrait, what did they do? What angle did they choose? How did they make that picture amazing, even though it's just this blah looking guy standing next to a car? What did they do to make that cool? I think a lot of those things are really great inspiration for me.
I mean, people always ask about the gear, so I'm going to have to ask about the gear.
Mm.
You're a Nikon guy, aren't you?
I'm a Nikon guy. I have two cameras. I have a Nikon D800, which is an older body, and a Nikon D300, which is a very much older body. I use those two cameras. I am basically married to about, I'd say, four lenses total. I have a 24 to 70 2.8, and that is my workhorse. It is almost always locked out at 70. Sometimes it backs up to 50, and rarely is it any lower than that, because shooting portraiture, going below 50 means you tend to bobblehead your model. But there are situations where maybe you want to elongate the body. Shooting wider angle on bigger people tends to work better. So there's things, and I do shoot the occasional environmental portrait. So a person in a factory or a person in a forest or whatever they're doing, and I need to capture more than just a headshot. So that's a really good go-to lens. Then I have my 85 prime 1.8 or 1.4, I should say. Really, really love that lens, and that is my workhorse. And I tend to I mean, it doesn't come off the body very often. When it does, it's usually for the 24 to 70. Then I have a 105 millimeter macro. They used to be my portrait lens of choice, and I still use it from time to time for a portrait lens. When we shoot boudoir, for instance, sometimes I'll put that on and I'll capture little details like lacy little details or little buttons or little bows and things like that, because you don't just need pictures of the person. Sometimes those detail shots or like the nails and things like that really help fill an album or use as a background. So I'll use the macro while kind of shooting the subject by another mechanism. We both have triggers in our camera. I'm not a natural light guy. I mean, it can be, but I usually like a combination of that or more than one light. And then I have a 70 to 200, which I rarely use. Um, I have it more or less for just sometimes when I want perspective compression, depending on the environment. If I'm in a place with a lot of crowded houses and I need a shot that looks like in a forest, I can use the little green space between two homes as a backdrop and fill the frame with it using the perspective. So that's there. And then lighting wise, I have 5 Einsteins strobes from Paul Buff, which I love, and I can't imagine ever changing that. I mean, I just really love that product. I've used some of the Pro Photo gear before, and it's really nice. But for $2,000, I can have 4 more lights. So I tend to be a buff guy, and I've got about every modifier that they make, and every way to modify those modifiers, from grids to baffles to gels, what have you. So that's pretty much it. I mean, that's what I use.
So you said before that you're not so much a pre-plan guy. How much would you say the percentage between
Photoshop and in camera on your images?
Well, when I say not pre-plan, what's interesting is when I go to these shoots, I like well, when I first started out, you go to a group event, you had no idea who's going to show up and what they're bringing. It would just be a group shoot, and the theme would be Halloween. I have no idea what I'm going to face. So I'd walk in and I'd see a whole bunch of people, and I used to shoot everybody. And then I started to kind of cherry pick and say, well, I really like this outfit. Now, hey, I wonder if this outfit posed this way would be more interesting. So that's where my kind of art background kind of started to kick in. So when I go to these group shoots now and I'm facing someone, and I don't paparazzi shoot, I tend to take the person one-on-one, shoot them in the environment that I think needs to happen, and then pass them off back into the pool, grab the next model, and so on. I try and look at that as an opportunity to make art with whatever it is they're wearing. So I try and be inspired. What would I do with this situation to make it neat? Then I usually have an idea for the post-production in my mind at that moment. I still try and get everything right in camera, but there are the ones that I want to draw on, I want to sketch on, I want to create things on top of that photo. Those probably 5% right now, but it's probably higher than that just because of my retouching techniques tend to be a little more invasive than some people's if the situation calls for it, and I'm looking for a certain look. I like the painterly look, for instance. A lot of people look at my stuff and say, well, it kind of looks like a painting, but there is no painting on it. But I think part of my post-production looks like that. But still, if you were to look at the straight out of camera and the end result, they look very similar. I think it's more my lighting and the way that I'm kind of setting up the scene rather than really the post-production. So I've kind of changed over time.
So people already know you from answering the questions on the show, but I'm going to bring the interview to a close now. So where can people find you online?
You can find me on Google Plus, of course, by my name, Scott E. Detweiler, and you can find me on my website is se.detweiler, DETWEILER.com. I'm on Facebook as well, but I don't have a fan page there. But you're welcome to try and friend me there. Although I don't get friend requests anymore, but I do look through the followers and friend people that I think I know. And I'm on Twitter every so often, and I'm on Instagram every so often. But I'm one of those tourists there. Like a lot of people, I have it but don't use it. A mentality that they have toward Google Plus. You'll find me on Google Plus.
Okay, so I will put all of that into the show notes and get some more eyes onto your work.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Scott, for coming on.